Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, another harrowing day in court for Oscar Pistorius. The South African track star throws up, presented with gruesome testimony about the autopsy of the girlfriend he shot last Valentine's Day. Also, UN investigators begin their probe into human rights abuses in Central African Republic. They say that they're hoping to combat deepening sectarian violence between Christian and Muslim fighters. And Africa has taken more of its share of $1 billion growing global video gaming market. Startups in Lagos are leading the way in an industry that's poised to take it up a level. First up, day 6 of South African track star Oscar Pistorius' murder trial, and the Olympian today was overwhelmed as the court heard harrowing testimony about the autopsy of his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp. Pistorius says he accidentally shot the model last Valentine's Day, believing she was an intruder.
Another day in the dock for Oscar Pistorius takes its toll. The defendant vomiting and repeatedly retching and sobbing as the pathologist outlined the fatal injuries sustained by his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. The case has been broadcast live since its start last week, but Judge Thokozile Masipa barred live TV and Twitter reporting of much of Monday's proceedings. That media blackout at the request of the pathologist due to the graphic nature of his testimony.
I think that the very personal nature of findings that are made at an autopsy examination, as well as the very graphic details pertaining to some of the injuries and wounds which may be described, have the potential to compromise the dignity of the deceased.
Monday's evidence revealing the findings of the post-mortem. Reeva Steenkamp suffered 3 bullet wounds to the head, hip and arm. For the pathologist, any could have proved fatal. The bullets fired by Oscar Pistorius were hollow points designed to do maximum damage. For some observers, after 6 days of testimony, so far the prosecution has the upper hand.
At this stage, I do think that the state have the upper hand. Their witnesses have testified well so far. But as I said, one will have to wait for Oscar to testify before we can make a proper evaluation of exactly how this matter is going and how it will pan out in the end.
Although he has yet to take the stand, the former Paralympic sprint star admits he shot Steenkamp after mistaking her for an intruder. If found guilty of premeditated murder, he faces at least 25 years in jail.
Libya is hoping to wrest back control of rebel-held ports in the east in a standoff that has cut off vital oil revenue to the state. On Monday, troops seized a North Korean tanker it says was preparing to leave with $30 million worth of illegally loaded crude from the port of Al Sidra. Former rebel militia have seized 3 ports and partially control a 4th. With tensions between the two sides escalating, Parliament says that within 1 week, a military force will be deployed to try and end the port blockages. Rebels, on the other hand, claim to be preparing to send their own fighters to central Libya to confront any mobilizing government troops. Though 30 were saved, at least 42 African migrants lost their lives when their boat capsized as they tried to make it into Yemen. The vessel went down off the country's southern coast of Bir Ali late Sunday. Survivors were picked up by a naval patrol and have been taken to a refugee camp. Last year is believed to have been the deadliest year ever for Africans trying to illegally enter Yemen. Up to 5,000, many from Ethiopia and Somalia, are thought to have drowned or perished whilst crossing deserts and making the dangerous journey. In Central African Republic, as unrest originally sparked by political disagreement continues to transform into deepening sectarian conflict, UN investigators say that they hope their presence in the country will stem some of the escalating violence. Today, the panel launched its investigation into human rights abuses committed during the country's last year of crisis. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
At the UN offices in Geneva, a team of investigators explained their human rights mission in the Central African Republic. The head of the commission is Bernard Achomuna, a Cameroonian lawyer who was deputy chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda.
One thing I can tell you from my Rwandan experience is that there is definitely a question of propaganda already, hate propaganda. We'll see whether, the hate propaganda is just, form of dialogue or really the start of something more sinister.
Mouna is referring to hate propaganda between Muslims and Christians. Last March, the Seleka rebels, who are mostly Muslims, overthrew the president François Bozizé. They were accused of committing many atrocities. As a result, groups known as the Anti-Balaka, who are mainly Christians, carried out revenge attacks. In recent months, thousands of people on both sides have been killed. When the Seleka leader, Michel Djotodia, stepped down in January, the number of Muslims fleeing the country rose dramatically. According to the UN, Muslims before the conflict represented about 15% of the total population, and that number has now been slashed to just 2%.
Campaigners hoping that negotiations between French energy giant Areva and the Nigerian government will see Niger get more out of allowing the multinational to mine uranium are calling for more transparency over talks. The nation's one of the poorest in the world, but is the world's fourth largest producer of uranium. Areva chief Luc Orcel last week met with President Mamadou Issoufou to thrash out the details of a new contract after the last 10-year agreement ran out at the end of last year. Well, talks have been shrouded in secrecy and critics fear the outcome, once announced, will again pander to Areva's interests.
Areva has been operating 2 uranium mines in Arlit in north-central Niger for 40 years with very advantageous conditions. The 10-year contract between Areva and Niger expired on December 31st. Niamey is asking that the next contract take into account a mining code the government passed in 2006. This would mean that Areva would pay Niger 12% of the value of the raw material extracted instead of the 5.5% it had been paying till now. Areva says this will result in a deficit for the Arlit mines. Various protests have been staged in Niger to demand that the mining code be applied. Many fear that Areva will pressure the government of Niger to revise the legislation.
We are saying that this would be treason. First, treason by the state minister in relation to what he had said before, and treason on the part of the president.
Niger remains one of the world's poorest countries. The new deal with Areva could mean an injection of $20 million per year into the state coffers. A godsend for President Issoufou, who has his eye on elections in 2 years' time.
Well, it was a pretty good weekend for African athletes at the World Indoor Athletics Championships in Sopot, Poland. Genzebe Debaba of Ethiopia won gold in the women's 300 metres. It's been an impressive season for the 23-year-old. She's broken 3 world indoor records this season. Meanwhile, fellow Ethiopian Mohamed Aman successfully defended his 800-metre title, finishing the race in 1 minute 46.4 seconds. The worldwide video games industry is expected to be worth around $87 billion by 2017, but the market in Africa continues to be largely untapped. However, all that's set to change thanks to several young startups in the Nigerian city of Lagos. Take a look.
Until now, Africa's video game market hasn't figured on the global stage. But within just 18 months, the team here at Kaluya have created 70 online games whose popularity reaches well beyond Nigeria's borders.
Somebody comes in, remembers something he saw somewhere or outside, we discuss it, we put it in the game. So it happens. The idea can come from anywhere. We also look at games that are very popular across the world.
Kaluya, meaning action in the Igbo language of southern Nigeria, started with an initial investment of $250,000 and is now worth around $2 million, employing a dozen people. With 400,000 downloads over the last year and a half, its popularity lies in the simplicity of its games.
What I like in Nigerian video games is, one, the local content, okay, because it tends to give you that everyday feel. For example, the Okada hustle. It tells you how you ride on your bike, trying to avoid so many obstacles on your way home.
But Kaluya aren't alone and need to score points against main competitor Malio, another young firm founded just 2 years ago. Its founder, Hugh Obi, is well aware of the potential of the mobile market.
Mobile is massive in this part of the world. It has the highest penetration, especially for internet users. And we are exporting a lot of our games onto mobile.
With 100 million people using mobile phones in the African nation, cracking Nigeria's mobile phones games market would be a very good game to win.
Well, that wraps up African news from me, but I will be back with more in about 45 minutes. Join us then if you can. Or stay with us, a short break, and more news and headlines from around the world. Take care.